Hey guys, Streams here, and today I'm gonna do a tutorial about BattleScribe. Now, for you who don't know what BattleScribe is or if it exists, it's basically a program where you can make lists for Warhammer 40k, and for other game systems, I don't know which exactly, but you can find that if you search for them. And basically allows you to make a list and also look up rules without having to go through your entire codex and also um, having to do all the math by yourself and the restrictions and so on. So it's a very useful program, and I have used it for a very long time. There was a little exodus in between, which is why I couldn't upload a tutorial earlier, but now everything should be fixed. And in my opinion, it is the best program there is so far. It's by no means perfect, but there is ways to get to the developer. So if there's something really bothering you, it's fine as it is. The program itself is completely free. You can buy it to get some extras, but functionality is not really inhibited in any ways, which is great. As you can see, advertisement is also pretty much non-existent. On mobile, it's a little bit different. I can't successfully say that I say, okay, it's perfect on mobile because it's much more intensive than on a PC. So I advise using this as a desktop. All right, so let's see how we get this. First of all, the program itself is called BattleScribe, and as you can see, if you look for BattleScribe, you will already find something. So as soon as you install that, something is going to come up and everything this here is missing. That's because the program itself is not Warhammer 40k. It's for all gaming systems. So the first thing we have to do before we actually can use this is to get data. And it's actually pretty simple, but I'm gonna still break it down here because people have difficulties finding this stuff. All you have to do is look for BattleScribe data, and then it will take you to either of these links. Doesn't really matter which one you take. And as you can see, there's a list of all repositories that you can take. So if you're interested in Battlefield Gothic and so on, you can also choose these. For 40k, obviously we're going to 40k. 40k without anything else, because the rest is Path of Glory and Heralds and whatnot. You download that, and it should download you a BSI data like here, called index. That one we just have to do once. We can do that often as we want, but it's gonna have to do it manually anyway, so there's no reason to do it. And that doesn't help you much because if you can't double click the data, but if you go to manage data over here, you can say import data from file, and you will find set data wherever you saved it as it is, and then he's going to load in the catalogs, and then you are ready to go. Sometimes it asks you to update the data, or you have to do it yourself. That's also on the managed data, so you can update that one, and then he's going to check and automatically download it if there is new data available. There's a fun thing you can do about this with the data collocation. If you have, like me, a mobile device and a computer and you want to share your lists between them, you can essentially make a free Dropbox account and then add the Dropbox folder as um, a basically as your BattleScribe folder where you get your lists from. So this way I can make a tablet list and still share it with my computer and the other way around too. Dropbox is also for free, so no issue there. The data is very, very small. It doesn't take long to keep it updated unless you're making like 50 lists per day. But other than that, it's pretty fast and you can keep these safe wherever you want to, just in case your PC breaks or something like that. You basically share all the data. So that's an awesome thing it can do with the data collocation. Outside of that, you can obviously use it as normal to change it wherever you want to, so you can find your lists, which is pretty important because the lists themselves cannot be opened like with a double click. You have to load them in BattleScribe because they are not an execution thing or like a PDF or something you would open now usually. You can make it that way, but I would not do that. All right, that's how you get data, pretty simple. And as soon as that happens, you will not go into the screen either. You will go to nothing. There is going to be nothing here. And you can open your roster here or here. Usually this one is faster. And then it's going to ask you to use a game system. If you have multiple game systems, it will have a drop down here, but obviously we only downloaded Warhammer, so we only have Warhammer. You also have to give yourself some time to choose a roster name, because one thing that newbies do is they save multiple rosters under new roster, and if you save new roster multiple times, you're going to overwrite it, obviously. So what I did is I'm usually, if you only play one faction, it is simple. You just write a list down that you make, and you give it some sort of a title that will indicate how you can find it again. But for me, for example, if I'm playing Space Marines, I'm gonna have SM, and then the chapter, for example, Iron Hands, and then the Forzorg, which is a cat sometimes, and then something about what the thing is about. So now I can always go to, okay, I'm going to see what kind of Space Marines list do I have. I can always go to SM, and I can also see the chapter and everything, and I have a good idea what I saved there. So I always, even if you're going experimental, just don't name it new roster. I can only advise against that. I have destroyed some lists of mine simply by doing that. All right, so you can also give yourself a point limit, and it's gonna warn you if you go over the point limit. But for now, we're gonna keep it in endless, which is -1, because it's not gonna give me any errors, which is obviously nice. The next thing that you do is you go for the Forzorg and the catalog. The catalog is essentially something like a codex, and for example, if we want to make a Custodes, we go to Custodes, and then we can choose what kind of detachment we want. Usually that will be combined arms, formation, or unbound. But if there's a chapter specific or faction specific one, it's going to show up at the very bottom right here. As you can see, those are the specific Adeptus Sororitas detachments, and they will show up here. Obviously, you can also do something like this. You can take the, I don't know, Chaos Renegades and then add something that doesn't even exist. But obviously, there's not going to be anything there. So if you do that, Chaos Renegade is nice, and nothing is going to show up in your catalog. Pretty simple. So only stuff works that actually exists. Now, if we've done that, we can add it to the roster, and then it's going to show up here under our list as a new one. You can do that endlessly. So if you're saying, okay, I want to ally in some, I don't know, Chaos Space Marines to my, or maybe a Renegade Knight to my list, you can add another one and another one. You can do it as much as you want. And since Warhammer supports multiple detachments or endless detachments, you can keep adding stuff here until it's full. Note on mobile, this will slow down the game loading very, very much, which sucks, but it's a problem with multiple rosters. I have no idea why, but just keep that in mind when you make your rosters. Okay, so as soon as we hit OK, you can see we have a bunch of catalogs over here. And this is all the unit choices and so on. And then one after the other, we can choose for each detachment. As soon as you see that, you also see there's a bunch of stuff popping up here. Because if there is rule issues, it will show down here. So the minimum requirements are unfulfilled, you have too many weapons, whatever. So you can check afterwards here. And as soon as something shows up, you know there's something wrong. The general idea here is if you have a point limit and you know you're over the points, it still will show up and annoy you. That's why I keep endless points until I'm done with the list. And then I'll go for the last one. All right. So next thing is adding units. You just add units by double-clicking here. So if we want the Wizard, we put them over there. We want some sort of troops, so we can double-click, and so on. And as you can see, there is different layers here. The first thing is what slot. Obviously something you cannot change, but you can minimize to show only HQ and how many points, but not what inside of the HQ slot. That's nothing interactive though. The Wizard himself does not have anything here if I click on him. However, if you hover over his name, it will show his rules. And I mean all his rules. This is the special rules, his profile, his war gear and his selection rules, and you can scroll down here and see what he has. You can also go down here in the next drop down and look specifically for that sword, for example, so you can see what rules are combined with the sword and which aren't, which is sometimes very handy because it can be confusing. But there's also stuff like this, where the troop is actually bold black and not a normal black. And that means we have options. If it's bold black, you always have options. For example, here we have the option to take a Star Weaver. And the Star Weaver itself added is not bold black, so we don't have any options for him. So that's a basic unit that cannot be changed. Also, we can add some players for obvious reasons. And as you can see, each player here is also black, which is obviously the case because all the players can be modified. You can give them melee weapons, you can give them ranged weapons, and it's going to show each player as one single unit. Unless you want to double click, then you again close the entire tree, which is sometimes really, really useful if you're getting too many. Sometimes you have the perfect setup. For example, I'm going to give my troop master a kiss, and that troop is pretty much good to go. So you can right click and duplicate the result. So you have another troop, as you can see. We have 2 of them. You can also remove them if you added too many. And customize name and favorites is something that is only available in the paid version, which is not really much to pay, trust me. But I'm not going to review this because it's not relevant to the guys that want to use this for free. This applies for everything else. So if you add something over here, for example, Scarborand, obviously he can be a warlord, so we can mark that up. And the warlord traits and so on is something different I'll talk about afterwards. But that's all the options he has because he is a normal named character and you can't add any options to those. It can get very complicated. So if you take a herald, for example, Herald of Corn, you have a bunch more options. But the good thing is all the supplements, all the extras are pretty much included, even Forge Quote add-ons. So you don't have to go into your codex and then into supplement and into the second supplement to find out what's what. You can essentially hover the entries, as I did here with the Breath Throne, and it will tell you what's up. There's some stuff like Exalted Demonic Rewards, those won't show up, but most of it have a table, which is really nice, so you don't have to look up anything. And if you select too much or illegally, it will always tell you, as you can see. So we have to remove the Hellblade to get the Agath, for example. Okay, there is some specific stuff here that does not apply every time, but for example with demons we have a Warpstorm table here. And if we hover that one, we will get a Warpstorm table, usually. But this is not a option that is available for each. For example, if we go to the Ynnari stuff here, or to the Harlequins, as you can see, there's nothing here. But if we were to add Space Marines, for example, you had Scepter Tactics and all that stuff as an option here sometimes. It's always listed as no Force Orc, because it is not necessarily something you will choose, right? It's something you add to have the rules. For example, if we go over here and take a look into my rules, we go to Imperial Fist Centurion Spam, get a bunch of arrows, but as you can see, there is something like no Force Orcs. So we find Chapter Tactics here. You can say what Chapter Tactic do you have. You can add Cypher because he's not part of a Force Orc. You can add him wherever you want to. You can also go for Psychic Powers and see what you can choose here. And if you choose that one, you can also hover over it to see the Psychic Powers. Very useful. Same goes for Warlord traits and on what table you want to roll. And if we add Chapter Tactics, for example, we also get the Iron Hands Warlord traits. Very, very useful because there's too much supplements in Warhammer 40k, that's for sure. So very easy to find all of these. Okay, so now we have made a list. Let's not take this one because this is obviously broken because it's a very, very old list I made. Let's take a Ynnari list that obviously has to still exist. And as you can see, we have 1815. We have a little bit of an issue with these things, but in general, it's a legal list. There we go. They all have their claves. And what can we do with that? Now, first of all, we can view roster, and then you have a HTML style of paper where you can see what's what. The cool thing about this is you can include points or no points. For example, if you want to know the points, if you want to have it for your opponent, so you can see what's what, you can include the points. And I usually don't include points because I know the points by top of my head, and I also don't need them for information. Profiles come inlined, so we have them right into their slot, right here, or as a summary, so at the very end, like so. Or you can go no profiles at all, then there's gonna be nothing in the entry and nothing below either. As you can see, only the rules. The exact same applies for rules, so you can inline the rules or you can have no rules at all. So this is basically the naked list. I will say though, if you choose this stuff here and you go back to your original one, it will only show the rules if you hover over them, but if you show the list to your opponent, he has no idea what's going on, which is mostly pretty bad. So I would keep points off for yourself, but inline or summary and inline and summary or summary with the rules, because it's gonna help you to know what's up. This applies also to the printed, copied, saved as image versions. You can also share it differently, like over Reddit, Facebook, whatever you want to. But essentially, the easiest way to have it shared is probably as a PDF. So you just print the roster and you essentially take something like PDF Architect or Microsoft XPS document writer, and there we go. We have it as a data somewhere, or you save it as a picture and then upload it to a host if you want to share it over the internet. If you just want to print it, you can obviously print it as a hard copy, but if I have it on my table, on my tablet, I obviously don't want to open BattleScribe every time, so I can just have the data as it is and fine. Alright, that's the way you can save them. If you want to save, you can save that as roster as it is. You can also save it as, so you don't overwrite your own stuff. And you can also save it as an HTML file, so you can upload it somewhere else. If you go for something like this detachment here, you can obviously also copy paste that by saving as under a different name, and then you have a duplicate of the said detachment. So if I want to change this one, I will never ever change this. I will always save this roster as, and could be to or changed or whatever you want. So I know exactly what's happening. And as you can see, we are still in our own detachment, but now we can switch to InQB changed, and I know there's not going to be anything screwed up in the other detachment. I can make my choices and change stuff up here. So do that. Don't overwrite your stuff because you're going to be mad and want to go back to it. You can always delete rosters as you want. There's also update options, so these things will update as they come out, and as you can see, you can also go for different types, which doesn't matter. I would always take the standard, and you can also go to Reddit if there's an issue. Just note something, because people don't really get that. The data that you downloaded, this one here, is not made by the same guy who has BattleScribe. It is made by a community that essentially nurtures this data to share with you guys. So he's not the guy you want to ask if something is missing and so on. It's more about performance or BattleScribe related issues more than about the data, because that's not his business. And if you want to talk to these guys, you go to their GitHub or to Reddit or something and ask them to change certain stuff. Because there is bugs. Do not rely entirely on these rules. Always look them up in your codex. There is some bugs, I'll not tell you which one, because there's too many, but in general it's pretty reliable. It's more reliable than you having to remember and look up into the codex every time. I especially would say this is good for new players, because there's a bunch of rules that you will not remember, or some that you don't know, and you will play against an opponent who also has an army that you don't know yet, So it's a very good idea to have his list as a BattleScribe in format, because you can essentially go, oh yeah, what's the Inky by? Okay, this is his profile. Those are his special rules. I don't remember what was Fearless again, and you can go, scroll down and see all the rules in combination. There's essentially a bunch of stuff that you can find. The only tricky part is the detachment rules, but if you have the Aldari detachment, for example, and you go down to the very bottom when you have the summary activated, you also have force rules before selection rules, and those force rules are the ones from the detachments. So even the detachment rules can be found here. It's just a little bit more tricky. So just in case those are not in the no force orgs thing, always look into view rosters and you can find those here. All right, that is all. Hope I could help you out. It's a good program. It's completely free. Even the Dropbox combination I did there is free, and I will continue using it because it is very, very nice to have it to share and keep the list updated too. There is only one issue here. Sometimes the data gets changed. The error you just saw is because the guy that changes the Inari files obviously found a bug or did some reorganization, and then you will have some errors, but the list will also always try to adapt. And if you save it as an image or as an HTML, you will always be able to open it. So I actually would like to save all of these as an HTML as well. I'm just too lazy to do it, but if you want to do it safely, just save them as an HTML. You can always rely on that because it will not be changed if the roster somehow gets changed. So there's advantages of being very flexible here and disadvantages for actually breaking your data sometimes. You have to choose whatever you want. I prefer the BattleScribe data over the HTML simply because I can do some adjustments, and I can keep changing my water traits and so on if I want them, and there's more information to use. But that's personal preference, and it's not by any means necessary to do the one or the other. You can do both, and it saves. I mean, it's 2 seconds to save it again. It's not really a big issue. Just have a different folder for the HTMLs, and there you go. You got all your list ready to share or whatever you want to do with them. All right, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed, and happy wargaming.